friends, and welcome back to the Sweatable podcast. My name is Brooks Herbis, and I'm an online fitness, nutrition, and mindset coach who's here to help you simplify and make sense out of the all too confusing fitness and nutrition industry. Let's be real, there's a lot of conflicting information online, and it can be hard to know what's legit and who to trust. In every episode, I'll be sharing the science and psychology behind health, fitness, and long-lasting behavior change. But I'll also be sharing real-life practical application, because all of the best info in the world only matters if you can actually apply it to your real life. So grab a coffee, water, glass of wine, or lace up your walking shoes, and let's dive in. Hello, you guys, and welcome back to the Sweat Symbol podcast. If you've been listening the last few weeks, you know that I am on a roll with these podcasts. I'm getting a little bit ahead so that I can take some time off when I am back in the Midwest to spend some time with my family. But today's podcast episode is a topic I am super excited about because it is really my bread and butter when it comes to fat loss and coaching, because you guys know that when it comes to really building a solid foundation for a healthy lifestyle moving forward, I am all about long-term behavior change. You will not find those 30-day quick fixes, restriction, cleanses in my coaching methods, because I don't want my clients to only have results for a month. I want my clients to have results that last them forever, which means that I have spent a lot of time researching and understanding long-lasting behavior change and focusing on not a complete lifestyle overhaul that you can only stick to for a short period of time, but truly things that you are going to carry with you for the rest of your life, which because of that, one of my main focuses with my one-on-one online coaching clients is habit building. And to be honest, habit is kind of tossed around a lot, but at its core, habits actually make up almost 50% of our day-to-day lives, which is kind of crazy because a habit is essentially something we do on autopilot. It's something we don't even think about, it just happens. So 50%, it's a little bit less than that, but close to 50% of our day-to-day activities, we're not even thinking about. They're just happening on autopilot. And habits aren't just the good things we do for ourselves that you might think of, like working out or meal prepping. A habit is truly anything that you're doing on autopilot. That means that habits are things like getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth. I bet you don't think about that. It just happens. Yes, maybe it's also getting up and working out first thing, but habits can also be things like snacking, or a really common one is not common, I should say, but a, thing that people think of as a negative habit is, something like smoking. So habits are really anything that we don't put too much cognitive effort into. They just happen. That's kind of the misconception when it comes to habits, is a lot of us think that habits are any sort of good thing that we're trying to build into our life. But the true definition of a habit is when that thing is happening on autopilot. And as I'm sure you could imagine, it takes some time to get to that place. The interesting thing about all habits is they follow the same pattern, which is really important for us to understand when we want to build a habit, but also break that habit. So when we're looking at a habit and how we get to that autopilot state, first we have some sort of cue or trigger. Then we do some sort of interpretation of that cue, which then ultimately leads us to some sort of action. And typically that action is a form of reward. Now, most of this happens without us even realizing it's happening. Going back to that brushing your teeth example every morning, it's just kind of happening. You're not sitting there every morning, waking up and heading into the bathroom and saying, okay, am I going to brush my teeth? Am I not going to brush my teeth? You probably wake up, you go into the bathroom. When you go into the bathroom, that acts as a cue. That cue then leads you to grab your toothbrush and start brushing your teeth. You're not actively making all of those choices. Your brain is just doing it on autopilot. That cue of stepping into the bathroom starts the cycle, and then the rest of the things just happen. On the flip side, there may be a lot of times that you're halfway through a bag of chips before you even realized what's happened. If all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I just ate this bag of chips, I don't even like remember having the conversation with myself that I was going to have these chips, then you likely have a habit around snacking at a certain time or snacking out of emotion. So these things that we're doing on autopilot, these things that are just happening without us having to make the decision or really think about, these are habits. Notice how that's different than something like a routine where we're very aware and thinking about what we're doing. So a routine is more something like when you're trying to get into the habit of working out, when you're still in that stage of waking up every morning and saying, okay, am I going to go to the gym? Am I not going to go to the gym? What should I wear to the gym? What kind of workout should I do at the gym? Okay, I'm going to get up and I'm going to go. You're still in the routine phase. You haven't quite built it to the point where it's a habit. I have been working out in the morning now for 10 years. So when I wake up in the morning, that conversation doesn't happen. I just get up, I put my workout clothes on, I go to the gym. I'm truly on autopilot when that's happening. Ideally, we want to get our health and fitness to the point where all of it feels habitual. We want all of this to feel as easy as getting up in the morning and brushing your teeth. I don't want you guys thinking about working out or making the protein-filled breakfast. I don't want you to have to go through those constant decision fatigues. I want your brain to go on autopilot and just do it. Because that's how these healthy habits, for lack of a better word, start to feel easier over time. You become less aware they're even happening because your brain is on autopilot. But because it takes time to build a habit, this is also why it can be so hard to build them and also so hard to break them. When we're talking about things that we don't even think about, where is the opportunity to utilize self-control? It's not really there. When we go back to that chip example and being halfway through the bag of chips, if that's happening without you even thinking about it, where was the opportunity for you to stop and make the decision to not have the chips? If it's just happening on autopilot because it's such a habit, we don't have that opportunity to make the better decision. There's no pause and let's think about this. Like your brain has just bypassed that. It's almost like how if you're a watch wearer, let's say you wear a fitness tracker and you consistently check the time on your fitness watch, you do the every, 15 minutes or hour, whatever, you do the turn your wrist up at you to check the time. But then one day your watch is dead and you're not wearing it, but you still go to check the time on your watch. It's just habitual. You're not thinking about it. You're not thinking about the fact that you don't have your watch on. It's just happening to you all the time. That's kind of what habits are in our brain. But just because right now you might be on autopilot with some habits that you're not super thrilled about, I want you to rest assured that even though it can be difficult to get your brain on autopilot for those good healthy habits or off autopilot for those habits that aren't really in line with our goals, it's still very possible. And not only is it possible, but building habits is also so key to long-term sustainable fat loss. And based off the fact that habits are things you don't even have to think about, we're just getting on autopilot for, I'm sure you can imagine why they would be so beneficial and why it's such an important part of my coaching process. Because think back to all the times you're not motivated and it feels like you have to use so much self-control and willpower in order to get yourself to do the healthy thing. Like, what if you didn't even have to spend the energy thinking about those things and the workout or the walk or the meal prep just happened on autopilot? Imagine how much time and mental energy you're saving yourself. Like, imagine all of the decision fatigue that you're eliminating. I always say that the people who are the most successful are the people who have to use willpower less. And when you have so many healthy habits around health and fitness, that's really what it is. You're using willpower less and less, which is why building healthy habits is so powerful. Now, We've just talked about why habits matter so much, why they are such a big part of my coaching, why you should care about them so much. How do you actually go about either building the healthy habit though, or starting to eliminate these habits that maybe aren't so in line with your goals? The best way to build new healthy habits is to reduce the friction, which is basically just saying, I want you guys to make it easier for you to follow through. And there's a few different ways to go about doing that. So these are a few different methods that I use with my own clients and also with myself to make habit building feel a little bit easier as opposed to just trying to get yourself to start completely from scratch. These things are going to help you reduce the friction of a new habit, which is ultimately going to make them easier to build. So the first one we have is habit stacking. And this is basically pairing a new habit that you're trying to build with one that already exists. So let's say that you're trying to get more protein in and you have decided you're going to do that by having a protein shake every day. But every day you get to the end of the day and you realize you haven't had a protein shake yet. And once again, you're falling prey to not hitting your protein target. Like you just can't seem to get yourself to remember to have that protein shake. But let's say that you already have a habit of having a cup of coffee every morning. You wake up, you turn the coffee machine on, you drink your coffee, you don't even think about it. A way to start making sure that you actually drink your protein shake would be to pair having your protein shake with having your cup of coffee. And I'm not talking about making that frothy that everyone talks about, just personal preference. That is not a great breakfast if you're trying to stay full and satisfied throughout the day. This is truly pairing a protein shake separately with a cup of coffee you're having every morning. Now, if the coffee works for you and you're also having a little bit of other breakfast, could be a great strategy to pair these two together, but I'm really talking about doing them separately here. So pairing the habit that you already have, which is drinking your coffee, with this new habit that you're trying to build, which is having the protein shake. All of a sudden, you're noticing that when you go to have your coffee in the morning, it's becoming second nature to also have the protein in the morning. The cue of having your coffee is helping you remember to also have the protein shake. You're also reducing that friction of having to remember to drink the protein shake out of the blue. You're directly pairing it with something that you already have a really built-in habit around, so it's going to become a lot easier to actually start to have that protein shake on a more consistent basis. So habit stacking can be really good, especially if you're someone who already has a lot of really solid health and fitness habits in place and you're just looking to level up or build a couple new ones. Another habit building strategy that I love is something called temptation bundling. And I actually just did that this morning. And it's basically pairing a habit you've been trying to build but aren't very excited about, or it feels like a huge chore to actually do it, pairing that with something that you really enjoy and you're really excited about. So maybe you're someone who dreads cardio and you never want to do it, and because of that, you skip it all the time. Pairing that cardio with something that you really like maybe your favorite audiobook or a podcast that you love, or maybe some, reality TV show that you love to catch up on. Pairing those two together. This works best when you only do the thing that you're really excited about when you're doing the thing that you're not so excited about. So, for example, let's say you are a big Love Island fan. That is actually, if you can believe it, the one reality dating show that I have not gotten into. But if you think I should, shoot me a DM and let me know. But let's say you are a huge Love Island fan, but you hate getting on the treadmill and walking at an incline 3 times a week. The best way to utilize temptation bundling is to only watch Love Island when you're doing your incline walking. That way, over time, you start to get a little bit more excited for your incline walking, because that is also the time that you get to watch Love Island. This can work if you also watch Love Island on like a random Tuesday night, but it works best if you're waiting to do the thing that you're really excited about for, when you're actually going to do the cardio. So I did it this morning. I am obsessed with this book I'm reading right now. It's called The Perfect Couple. Highly recommend it. I really wanted to read my book, but I knew I needed to get my cardio in. So I was on the bike while I was reading my book. So that is one example of temptation bundling. A non-fitness example of this would be if you hate folding laundry, same thing. When you fold laundry every week or every day, however often you're doing it, could that be the time that you're listening to your favorite podcast or putting on your favorite TV show? So really it's just pairing that thing that you don't really want to do and has been feeling really hard to do with something that you're really excited about. You could also do this with meal prep. Pairing every time you meal prep, you again watch your favorite TV show, you listen to your favorite podcast. This isn't, of course, only about consuming media. Those are just the easiest examples to see this come into fruition. But if you find yourself having a lot of resistance for building one of these healthy habits, whether it's a type of workout, whether it's meal prepping, a really good strategy would be to pair it with something that you're really excited about. So another and the last habit building strategy I'm going to give you guys to really start to reduce that friction is to start small. So maybe a big habit that you want to build is to meal prep, but the thought of prepping every single meal is feeling really daunting. So instead of doing that, could you start with just prepping a protein or only prepping your lunches? Start with a portion of the habit that feels smaller and more attainable. Once you can master that, then you can start building on that and building up the true habit that you're trying to build. So reducing the friction by starting much smaller, making it feel more attainable is going to be a huge help. Now, on the flip side, we have just talked about how to build up these new habits. But like we've talked about, habits aren't only good. We do, in fact, have some habits that aren't the best for us or maybe aren't in line with our goals. So just like how when we are trying to build up these new habits, our strategy was to reduce the friction. When we're trying to break these habits that we no longer want, what we need to do is to increase the friction, make them harder to do. And this is something that I really work with my one-on-one online coaching clients with because it's just as important as reducing the friction for the healthy habits. We want to make those habits that we aren't so thrilled about harder to do. And the reason I work with my clients so much on this is that this can be really individual. And there's a really fine balance between increasing the friction that turns us into restriction and actually makes us want to do this bad habit less, and increasing the friction so that it just feels more difficult to do this bad habit, so we're less likely to do it. So I really work with my clients to create this, personalized what this increase in friction is going to look like, because it's super important to find that balance to make sure that you're not sending yourself in the opposite direction of wanting to do that bad habit less. So when we're trying to build healthy habits, we want to reduce the friction. And when we're trying to break habits that we no longer want, we need to increase the friction. Now, at the end of these podcast episodes, I want to start leaving you guys with one piece of action, because at the end of the day, just listening is great, but the best way to start to make progress towards your goals and the best way to put all of this into action is to, you guessed it, actually take action. So at the end of these episodes, I'm going to start giving you an action challenge of one immediate takeaway that you can start implementing. So today's action challenge is to determine one habit that you want to work on and how you're going to start working on it. So are you going to use habit stacking, temptation building, temptation bundling, or starting small? Once you decide what the habit is and which method you're going to use to build the habit, send me a DM, let me know what it is so that I can help you and hold you accountable to start building these habits. Thank you guys so much for listening. I always appreciate your support. If this episode was helpful, I would so appreciate if you send it to a friend who you think it might help too, so that we can keep building this amazing community. As always, if you guys have any questions, shoot me a DM. I would love to chat with you more. But in general, thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you all so soon.